High school baseball season right around the corner. We get some nice weather, and we'll be able to get this thing underway. And I think the nice weather's coming this weekend and certainly into next week. Big game James Allen from the Times-Union, who covers the high school sports scene better than anyone. He's all over it, watches it, covers it, and been doing it for many, many years. And he's with us every Friday here in this segment on Big Board Sports. Good morning, Big Game. How are you?
Good, Roger. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Big Game. So once we get going with the baseball season, who is the team to beat in high school baseball?
A very good question, because if you look at those large schools, most of the top teams graduated pretty much their entire rosters. Shen, coming off a state championship, pretty much graduated their starting lineup, including their top three pitchers. So it is. And that's kind of like the way it is for pretty much all the AA teams that were contenders last year. So it is going to be a very interesting season, and then one that's going to play itself out in basically a month, because by the time we get really kicked in next week, you're talking about the 10th is Monday. The seeding meeting is May 15th. So you're going to have to, if you're a team out there that hasn't played, you're going to have basically a little over a month to get 20 games in before the sectionals. So it is fast and furious, and we're going to learn a lot about teams very, very quickly.
Well, and you're going to find out your tax and pitching staffs, too. You cram all these games in a short period of time, right? Pitching is going to be at a premium here. Who has the best pitching staff? Because to me, that's where it starts. How about a team that you think might be strong on the bump?
Well, I know one team that has a very strong pitcher coming back, and that's Colony, and that's Ryan Lambert, who's originally last year he made an oral commitment to go to St. John's. He decided to go to Binghamton instead. That's where he's going to be headed. And he's a guy that throws high 80s, pretty strong pitcher. Was the Suburban Council Pitcher of the Year last year. So Colony has somebody that is definitely established coming back. You know, teams that have always had good pitching staffs, you look at Shan, you look at Yoland, they're going to have arms. They're going to be good. And it's really going to be incumbent upon, teams to develop that. It's going to be more difficult, Roger, for teams that are smaller school teams, because, now for people that may not know this, there's a pitching limit now in high school baseball. So you can only throw so many pitches in a game, and then when you get to that point, you have to have a certain amount of rest, given how many pitches you throw. So for teams that only have 13 or 14 guys or 12, you get the games backed up. You're really talking about you're putting a lot of torque on your pitchers. And then, again, they can only go so many, and it's regulated. I mean, the coaches, each inning go to the umpires and say, okay, this is how many pitches, it's being charted. So it is going to change the landscape, especially for smaller school teams, because they're going to have to develop more arms, and they're going to have to use guys. This is going to be a situation where you're winning or losing by a lot. You're going to be looking to pull your guys, because you want to save pitchers. You want to have them available for other games. So what you're going to see, and what we've already seen with the Adirondack League, I wrote about it the other day, they've already reduced their league schedule from 14 to 10 because their fields are just not going to be ready. Lake George is probably not even going to play a home game until late April. There's a few other teams that are already in that spot right now. So what we're going to see is teams are really going to, especially if we get into league games for some larger school leagues and they start getting games postponed because of weather, you're going to see schools, really foregoing the non-league games, and you're just going to be counting on those 14 to 16 league games, because those are the ones that are ultimately going to determine if you get in the playoffs or not.
Big Game, if you did an anonymous survey of high school baseball coaches in the area, what do you think the results would be and their feelings of the pitch limit?
Chris, I think most of them would be in favor of it, but there are going to be some people that aren't. And I've seen it over the years. I've seen guys pitch 140 pitches and then come back a couple of days later and throw another 140, and that's just not, you don't see that in the major league, so why would you expect a 15 or 16-year-old to be able to, not saying they can't do it, it's obviously been done, but it's just not a situation that's conducive for, it's conducive for the potential for arm injury. So I think most of them would agree with it. I think there would be a few that would say, "Oh, you look, I know my guys, and I know this kid can do it." But the bottom line is a safety issue, and I think it's a situation. The bigger issue to me, and it's something I sort of alluded to in that story that I wrote on Wednesday in the paper, was New York's going to really have to think about maybe moving the schedule back. And I know that they don't want to have a lot of teams playing in June, but when you get to the playoffs, I mean, you say playoffs, how many teams are playing at that point? I mean, you're only having the sectional champions, so you're talking about a very finite number of teams that are actually playing into June, but that's when the weather's good. I mean, last year was not the worst, not the best we've had, but there was a lot of rain in April. There was a lot of cold temperatures. There wasn't that many warm days until you got to the end of the season, and they asked schools to play, 20 games in some cases in a 25 or 28 day window. You have to have one day off per week. Schools. One of the things I suggested when I wrote a column about this, when the rule was going to be enacted, was schools have really got to think about using Saturdays, and especially if you get backed up, you want to have that window to be able to get games in, and also have a little buffer in between. So, say for instance, you had 2 games rained out in 1 week, you may not have to make them up in 1 week. You can maybe play one game on a Saturday, league game, and then play the following Saturday, as opposed to trying to jam 5 games into 5 days and then really putting a lot of torque for your guys. You're going to be pitching guys that are not that experienced, and you're throwing them out there in situations like that. It's going to have to be something where people are creative, but ultimately I think New York's got to move the schedule back. I just don't think it's going to be something that's going to, I think you're going to see a lot of teams playing no non-league games, and it really stinks. I mean, I know Lake George case, Eric Hoover said, I got 17 guys, it's the most I've ever carried, sort of being, proactive about the fact that the pitch count was involved, and they've already gone from 19 games down to 14. So you're asking guys to be on the varsity, and you're going to get some innings, and now some of these guys may not even get to pitch that much, if at all. So it's a real interesting subject, and something that's obviously going to be looked at the end of the year, no matter what happens.
Well, listen, no matter what happens, no matter, I am all for limiting the innings pitched. Memo to all coaches out there at every level. Please don't blow out arms. Please. It's not worth it. It really isn't. All right? It's not all about the wins. It's about the kid's arm, his future. 12 years old, 13, 14, 15, 16, whatever that age group is, you need a pitch count. Let's not be blowing out arms. It's not worth it. It really just isn't worth it. And I see it at the little league level, and it makes me crazy when I see tournaments in travel baseball and managers, 100 and some pitches. Then the kid in the tournament's coming back and pitching the next day. Can't be doing that. All right, big game. One more for me, and that is lacrosse. What are we talking? Is Niskayuna still the powerhouse team to beat in boys lacrosse?
Well, I would think you have to put them right up there. I mean, Shen was obviously very good last year. They're going to be somebody that you have to keep an eye on, too. This unit's got a real good test. It's been an annual test for them, really the last almost 2 decades now. They're playing tomorrow at Union College against Darien. It's been a rivalry between top teams from 2 different states, and it's always a good litmus test for the Warriors. Got to see where they're at. And I would imagine that will be the case come tomorrow night. They're playing at 6:30 over at Union College, and obviously they have a very good, strong team. You look at Shen, you have to look at them and say they're very good. Girls side, Shager had a great year last year. They won it. Gilliland's always seem to be in the final every year. They've also got some interesting games tomorrow. Girls wise, they're playing out of section. The Gilliland's playing Yorktown, and Shaker's playing Cicero North Syracuse over at the League tomorrow. Some of these schools utilizing those turf fields, and it's the only way they're going to, even their sport's going to be able to get into this. Some of the fields are just too soggy to even support lacrosse right now. So, I mean, the spring season is very interesting. I mean, it is such a condensed season as is, and then when you have the weather issues, it really really makes it even more condensed, where you have to do a lot of things in a very short window, and your team's got to be on point, and you hope that you don't get in a little bit of a rut because you don't have much time to get out of it.
Weather's breaking. Beautiful. We get some of these high school spring sports underway. Big Game James Allen every Friday. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you this time next week.
Thanks, Big Game.
Sounds good, Roger. We'll actually have some games to talk about.
No doubt. Thank you, Big Game. Big Game James Allen with us every Friday in our high school sports segment.